Do you guys know what it means, the vernacular, when I say going into business for yourself? Are you familiar with that term? It's a very big deal in professional wrestling. Professional wrestling, which is a scripted television show. If somebody goes off script when they're on live TV, they're now going into business for themselves. And sometimes that works. I'll give you a great example. Stone Cold Steve Austin. The ringmaster, Stunning Steve, just another guy. Bald head and a black vest, having a hard time getting over. All right. So they're at something called King of the Ring. Stone Cold goes to do an interview, which was scheduled, with Michael Hayes, which was scheduled. Now, they happen to be live, and whatever comes out of his mouth, whether he goes off script or not, the whole world is going to hear. Now, wrestling at this time was a kids program, and all of the adults that went there, it's like the same reason that an adult would buy a Happy Meal. They bought it for the kid sitting in the back seat that asked them to. Okay. So it was very much junior high kids specifically. 5th through 8th grade. Real heavy in that area. There was no middle fingers. There was no drinking beer. There was no scantily dressed women. There was nothing like you saw after the Attitude Era changed wrestling. But Stone Cold, it's very important that you understand the time frame, because Stone Cold came out on live TV with the worst profanity ever done in a children's show, in this case professional wrestling, when he said to Jake Roberts, "You're John 316. Well, Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass." And that was so hot, a 3-letter word, not 4, ass, was so hot that Michael Hayes, who's now in the interview because he's holding the microphone and you can read his body language, he has seen pink slips getting handed out to Stunning Steve and to himself as soon as he passes through gorilla position. It's one of these, it was this wonderful moment, and Hayes went with it because he didn't know what else to do. And Stone Cold was live. Now, sure enough, they both almost got fired. They walk through the curtain. Vince is sitting in gorilla. All hell breaks loose. Vince doesn't know for sure what to do because something just happened. He can sense something happened, but he didn't know what it is. And Stone Cold, who won King of the Ring, that was his big push, is going to have everything taken away from him. Now, this pay-per-view happens to be on a Sunday, which means Monday Night Raw is tomorrow. Well, by the time tomorrow came, and as hot under the call as Vince and all the other executives were, when they get to the arena, the arena is full of homemade signs that say Austin 316. They go on to put Austin 316 on t-shirts, which is to this day the only gimmick t-shirt ever sold in department stores. I was in college at this time. Guys that were going to college were walking around campus in shirts that said Austin 316, and I mean everywhere. Every fifth guy had one. I went to the store to get my Austin 316. They were sold out. So it worked. The Attitude Era began right there with Austin going into business for himself. It just happened to work. Goldust went into business for himself and got fired. CM Punk went into business for himself and allegedly had the mic cut. I still personally think that might have been a work, but this is the way the story is told. Francis Ngannou has not gone into business for himself. Do I credit Francis for that, or do I fault him? Two sides of the coin. The number one thing that Francis must understand, and it is his manager's job to get him to know this. If you are attempting to renegotiate a contract, meaning you want more money, you must have, what is that, guys? More value, correct. No fighter has ever understood that concept in the history of time, and likely won't. But if you want to get more, you have to be worth more, which you can only do one way. And it is not with the punches, and it is not with the kicks. It is with your mouth. And it is going to the world and making them interested in your story. That upsets many people. But when I point to history, known as Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor, where they sold out 4 arenas in 2 different countries for a press conference, where a whole bunch of fight fans showed up knowing there was 0 chance that a punch would be thrown. 4 arenas in 2 countries sold out. So we understand the value of communication. People want to call this martial arts. It's not. That's a term that they came up with to get a bill passed through the Nevada State Legislature in 2001, but they still want to call it arts. Art is communication. There is no better form of communication than speaking. It is quite literally what separates the humans from the animals. Quite literally. The ability to talk, the ability to communicate, the ability to understand, the ability to influence, the ability to motivate, the ability to encourage, the ability to antagonize and anger, whatever emotion you're going for, you do it with this. Francis has gone silent. He's done the opposite of going into business for himself. Now, Francis has been extremely above board. He has told everybody, including us, it's none of our business. He has chosen to bring us in on this and just let us know, here's what I'd like to do. It's going to be a full press for me. No negotiating. Here's what I need. I'll do whatever I'm asked to over here, but I got to have this. To the point that if I can't get this, don't even bring this up because I'm out. He's been very honest. We got to give Francis credit for that. Not to mention Francis has been polite. Francis is not using profanity. He's not trying to burn down the house. He's not going on media tours and putting anybody down. In fact, it's the opposite. He speaks very calmly. He speaks very politely. He said his piece. Hard to be mad at Francis. The other side of it is what I'm speaking to. Whatever Francis is going to do, and whether that's in the octagon or that's in the squared circle, he still has got to use the media. Guys, there are people that have retired from the sport that are as good or better than Francis, and nobody knew they left. There's an old Rodney Dangerfield joke where he comes onto stage and Rodney Dangerfield says, I retired 2 years ago, but nobody knew. And everybody laughs because everybody gets it, right? The truth is within the humor. If Rodney Dangerfield retired, who's going to know? How would any of us know? Sean Shirk, ever bit as good as Francis Ngannou, sold ever bit as many tickets, had the same beautiful belt. Sean Shirk left the sport, and it was 2.5 years, and Sean just made an announcement through a .com. He goes back to Minnesota. I think he started his own flooring business, something to do with construction, I believe floors specifically. And he just made a statement. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm retired. He was a world champion. He didn't need pomp and circumstance. He didn't give a damn. He was going to do this until he was going to go do this. I loved it and I respected it, but it's an equal point. Rico Rodriguez, who held the same heavyweight world championship that Francis did, won it in the same spectacular upset fashion as Francis did, was lighting the world on fire, same as Francis, getting t-shirt deals, writing books, got celebrities like Vin Diesel showing up to watch his match. It was a big deal. He just walked away. Rico may not even be retired. He walked away. He didn't need anything. He didn't need a parade. He didn't need anybody to tell him good job. He was doing this until he was going to go and decide to do this. And I only bring that to you because that's the same spot Francis is in. As soon as you quit talking, you're done. It's over. If you go silent by choice or by force, it is now over. People must hear from you. You cannot build a brand without marketing it. You cannot market a brand without doing interviews. So whatever it is that Francis wants to do, if he would like more, he needs to be worth more, which means he needs to be doing more interviews. He needs to be doing more press. And I don't know which way he wants to go with this. There is few things that work in marketing better than athlete versus promoter. That's a fact. And I can turn back to Vince. But Vince McMahon versus Hulk Hogan sold out WrestleMania faster than any other headlining act they've ever had. Something about it just works. Hell, Jake Paul's testing it right now. Jake Paul's an athlete. He's taking on a promoter in Dana White. It's not even his promoter, but it works. It always works. It's low-hanging fruit. It's like music. There's only so many notes, right? You got to grab whatever options you have, and Francis isn't doing that. Now, I think that proves my point that he's being polite. He's just being very sincere. I want to make sure I have this in my contract. Whether the opportunity comes or not, if it does come, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I don't want some piece of paper it's got my signature on it to preclude me from my participation. Okay. But what if he doesn't do that? What if he changes his mind? Only Francis would know. I take him as very sincere. I don't think Francis has changed his mind. But what if he does? He would still like more over here. He's made that clear. And I don't think we have anything against giving him more. They up prices on us all the time. It's very volatile. It fluctuates tremendously. It's called elastic in business, but I'm talking about the price of a live ticket to get in. Merchandise goes up. Video games go up. Popcorn, based on the venue, it can go up. We don't complain. Pay-per-view just went from $50 to $75. We didn't love it, but we didn't complain. We kept watching. We'll give more, but you got to be worth more. You got to make us more interested. I'm used to getting you for $50. How many interviews did you do before that fight? 4? Okay. You want $70? I need 9. Do we have a deal? Right? It's one of those things. It's very basic. It's very, very straightforward. I don't see Francis going into business for himself, which again puts him in the category of polite, which makes it very hard to be mad at Francis. He seems like he's being a real gentleman in this. I just don't know if this is the time. This is the ass whipping business. I heard Dana White say it yesterday to Brett Okamoto. Dana said, and I quote, "This is a mean business and people say and do mean things." Okay. That's a pretty straightforward answer. But we got to have a little bit more of this. We got to have Francis going into business for himself just a little bit more. And I'll tell you where this comes from is, again, Dana was talking to Brett. Brett asked Dana a very interesting question. Brett said, "Hey, Dana, what 2 fights do you really want to make sure happen in 2022? Dana was very sweet because he brought Leon into this. He said, "Nobody deserves a championship fight more than Leon. Kamaru's got the hurt hand. Everybody's agreed on this. We're looking for a date. We checked on the hand to heal to figure out when we can do that." And he said, "And I also like to get Jon Jones back." Now that one does make me wonder, what the hell are we not getting Jon Jones back for? He's training his ass off. People say he looks great. He had some weird psychological thing where he needed to weigh 240, but good news, he does weigh 240. What's he not fighting for? I mean, what's the difference now? What is the difference in Jon Jones being a champion but not fighting, not talking to anybody? How is that any difference in Sean Shirk being a champion and just walking away to a flooring business, or Rico being a champion and just walking away, or Francis and not, right? If you don't tell anybody, as soon as your mouth closes, you're done. It's over. I'm not hearing from Jon. I'm not seeing anything from Jon. The same thing goes for Stipe. Now, that's par for the course. Stipe goes into a different category, right? He's the fireman. He's got a different image. We respect that. We understand that. But what in the hell would be holding them up? We're sitting here with Dana White, who's got both these guys under contract, and Dana says, "I hope to make the fight." You hope to make the fight? Help me out. What's possibly stopping you? What is possibly stopping us from getting these two together? And there's all sorts of answers in all sorts of places. You guys ask me right now, how come Covington isn't fighting Chimaev? And I'll answer the question, because Covington's on break and Chimaev's about to fight Gilbert Burns. I could play that all day. Stipe's doing nothing and Jon Jones is doing nothing, and they're in the same weight class trying to get paid to do the same thing, and they're willing to do it against each other. What am I missing? And I still maintain, this is me putting on my Columbo rain jacket, I think the only reason Stipe versus Jon hasn't got named is because we don't know if we're doing it for the undisputed strap or the interim strap, and largely that has to do with Francis, who is given the right to have some period of time to heal from a knee surgery. I should know all about that surgery. I should know what leg it was on. I should know the doctor's name that did it. I should know the post-surgery meal that Francis ordered to the hospital room. I should know what antibiotics he's on. I should know what his coach has to say and what his trainer has to say. I should have an MRI that I'm putting up here, and I'll bring a doctor. I'll bring Dr. Abasti. I'll say, "No, Doc, what do you think about this?" And Doc will give me an answer. I'll say, "Well, Doc, I hear you, but I don't know about that, because there was an NFL guy named Refrigerator Perry, and he had the same thing done, and he was only, we'll have a whole conversation. It'll go back and forth, but Francis will be on the tip of our tongue. I want to know everything that Francis is doing. I might even get somebody to say, "Well, it's going to be really hard for him to wrestle. He's going to need an upright posture," but that's perfect if he's in there with Tyson Fury, because they're standing up anyway. The whole thing can get spun. I'll help you spin it. It'll all work out. But a guy who believes he's punishing somebody by you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You are a brand. You want more. You must get out there, bring more people in, be worth more. Very simple, very basic. It's called going into business for yourself.